Okay, now we're going to get the problem 30, part C, making the crosstab. It turns out making this crosstab is a little more difficult than I thought. I don't think no one on the test by nobody made the crosstab. Okay, so if you didn't make the crosstab, don't worry about it. It was more difficult than I thought, so I'm not blaming anybody for that except me. But let's go ahead and look at how we would make a crosstab. There are different ways of doing it, but how would we make a crosstab using pivot tables if we don't know really advanced pivot table techniques? Okay, there are a couple ways to do it with just regular pivot table techniques, and we'll see. I think we'll probably only have time for one way in this first video. But now, okay, let's click into our data. Let's make the pivot table. Come in here, insert, pivot table. How are we doing? Is it the correct area? Yes, it is. Let's go to a new worksheet. Okay, sheet 9. Well, you can see how many times I've done this. Been back and forth through it. Okay, let's see. Now, first off, company. We're going to put that into the body. Okay, and since it's nominal data, it's automatically counted, and we can see up here we have 20 companies. Okay, now let's put employees. I want to put employees into the rows. Okay, and we can see we've got for every possible number of employees, I think 50,000 has 2 companies, otherwise it's all 1 company each. So what we want to do is group this. So now notice that I'm over the right-clicking over the row labels area, not on the body, over the row labels area. I come to the group. Okay, now we want everything less than 40,000, everything above 40,000. Okay, so we'll start with 0, go up to the max, that's fine. But now, hang on, I want to group by, instead of 10,000, we're going to group by 40,000. There we go, 40,000. Okay, and look, we've got here, we're almost there. We've got row 4 here is everything under 40,000. That's okay. But the ones above 40,000 now are in 2 different groups. 40,000 to not quite 80,000, and then 80,000 up the rest. Okay, we can see here we've got 10 companies below 40,000 and 10 companies above 40,000. Okay, so let's see. Below 40,000 and greater than or equal to 40,000. Okay, and let's justify those. Now this is kind of educational here. Don't consider this part of the test, but this is how to use pivot tables, or what happens when you use pivot tables. I'm going to put equals here, and for the number of companies below 40,000, I'm going to click on B4. But watch what happens. I don't get equals B4. I get, voila, get pivot data function. So says get the pivot data from the pivot table company. That's the name of that's what's in the body, which starts in A3. This pivot table starts in cell A3. And we want for employees, which is down in the row labels, we want the group that starts with 0. Okay, so that's 10. There we go, 10. Right? Okay, now, hang on a second, I'm going to come, and now I want to add up sum. I want the sum function for B5 and B6. Sum of B5, B6. We'll close off our parentheses, and that gives us 10. Now notice here that for the sum, we don't get that get pivot table data function. It's just the sum. Okay, so there we go. So far, so good. Number of employees, we have 10 with fewer than 40,000 employees, 10 with 40,000 or more employees. Okay, now let's see what happens when we add in revenue here. So I'm going to take revenue and add that in as the column labels. And of course, we have for every different possible revenue, we've got 1 company each. So let's come up here and right-click in the column labels. We're going to group it. Do the same thing as we did before. We're going to start at 0. This time we're going to group it by 14,000 each. Okay, 0 up to the maximum, 14,000 each. Okay, and notice we get 3 groups. 0 up to not less than 14,000, 0 up to 13,999, 14,000 up to not quite 28,000, 28,000 up to the rest. Okay, and then we have our sums in the columns here. Okay, so now if this would be fine, if we wanted a crosstab, this crosstab, we'd be fine. But we don't. We want a crosstab which combines, well, we want just a 2x2 crosstab. You know what it is. But now let's take a look what happened down here. Get pivot data. Notice that this is now instead of being 9, this is 10. Okay, so this is all companies. This get pivot data here for the company thing, which starts at A3, all companies that have employees in this category that starts at 0. Okay, so I'm going to come here and I'm going to replace this equal. I'm going to click in B5 again, and notice what we get. Okay, now we get pivot data. The company pivot table, which starts in cell A3, employees, the group which starts with 0, revenue, the group starts with 0. Now that's 9. That's just the amount in cell B5. Okay, let me pull this down a couple cells. Okay, down a little farther, give us some space. All right, now this is the fewer than 14. Let's put a $sign in there just so we'll know this is revenue. Fewer than 14,000. I think that's his units, probably 14 million, but okay. Fewer than 14. Let's right justify that. Put it over the numbers. Okay. Then this over here we want to be greater than or equal to, put in a $sign, 14,000. Okay, and we'll right justify this. Right justify, there we go. Okay, now it's actually going to be not very hard. Let's see, this, sum B5, B6. Uh-oh, we had the problem here. We're going to move this down a bit. Okay, so greater than 40,000. When we expanded the pivot table and put in the revenues, it moved the pivot table down 1 row and it messed up our formula here. So you have to be careful of that. Check your formula. So we want this to be all companies with 40,000 or more employees and a revenue less than 14,000. That's correct. Whoa, this is taking a long time. Now this one, we're going to sum these cells, and this one we're going to sum these cells. And there we have our pivot table, but let's put a frame around it. I'm going to come up to the home menu. Okay, use the auto sum. Be careful, it gets the correct. Okay, that's 11 with revenue below 14,000, 9 with revenue greater than 14,000. Now let's sum our rows, auto sum, but again, be careful there. We want the rows, we're not looking. Okay, there we go, that's correct. 10 companies below 40,000 employees, 10 companies 40,000 or more. Let's sum them all up, 20 companies in all. Okay, so there we have a pivot table using only just our basic, simple pivot table techniques, where we've done a little hand massaging here to come up with another table on the side. Okay, I'm going to show you a different way to do this in another video. Okay, goodbye for now. Bye-bye.